The genocide of knowledge, Israeli systematic destruction of Gaza's intellectual life, and the silencing of Palestine's future. That is the topic we'll be talking and listening about in the next minutes. I'm calling for Mr. Wesam Amer to speak and to take his place at the stand.
Thank you. Distinguished members of the jury, dear audience, it's always hard to speak after students and hearing all these witnesses from our students who were evacuated from Gaza. My name is Wesam Amer, former Dean of Faculty of Communication and Languages at Gaza University, and currently a visiting professor at the University of Cambridge. I speak today not only as an academic, but also as a Palestinian, like thousands of Palestinians who lived through the systematic destruction of knowledge, the systematic destruction of Gaza's educational life. What I describe today is not just an abstract or theory. It is an experience. It is not only my experience, my personal experience. It's an experience for hundreds, if not for all academics and students in Gaza. What we have seen in Gaza is not only genocide, because the word genocide, the word massacres, the word war or conflict would not describe the reality on the ground. The reality is much beyond than that. What we have seen in Gaza is the deliberate erasure of knowledge, the methodological annihilation of universities, schools, and the killing of scholars, teachers, and students who embodied Gaza's intellectual heart. Since my evacuation from Gaza before the total closure of Rafah crossing, I have always carried a heavy mix of feelings. Though physically safe in Cambridge, still my mind remains tied to Gaza, as every Gaza person living outside and every Palestinian and every supporter to the justice in Palestine. I worry constantly for my family, my neighbors, my colleagues, my students, who continue to endure what feels unbearable circumstances. My family and I were displaced several times. We lived in tents or in temporary tents. And honestly speaking, the word tent, when I say tent, it's much exaggeration, because the words, the meaning of these words or these terms would not describe the reality. The tent in Gaza is just a stick and a piece of clothes or plastic. And you can imagine, in such circumstances, you want to protect yourself, your family, your kids, your students who keep asking for lessons and to ask and concern about their studies. Together, we struggled to find clean, drinkable water, as we heard from our students. It was a big struggle. The big priority was to survive as much as possible, to find electricity, to charge our phones, devices, so we can connect with our students, with our colleagues, and even to search for a quiet corner where, or that could serve as makeshift classroom. These moments reveal not only our suffering, but also the solid determination of people in Gaza, of academics, of students, to preserve life and learning amid genocide, learning amid devastation and destruction. What is unfolding in Gaza today is not merely a genocidal war. It is the continuation of a Zionist settler colonial project that seeks to uproot Palestinian existence. What my generation is witnessing is, in truth, a second Nakba. History is repeating itself. The same trauma that my grandparents endured in 1948, and again my parents in 1967, is now being lived by us, the current generation in Gaza. Since October 7th, 2023, we have faced renewed and multiple displacements, systematic violence, and the same relentless campaign of erasure. For 17 years, we survived under blockade and open-air prison, where scarcity was constant, but dignity remained intact. Despite everything, we continued to teach, to learn, and to dream, and will continue to dream for a better future for our people, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Here, I would like to share some photos that I'm not sure if it works, sorry.
Just point it into the screen.
Nope, does not work, sorry. As you can see here, even though we faced the Israeli 17-year blockade and siege of Gaza, we tried our best to survive the blockade. Here, these photos capture the brighter side of Gaza. Moments of perseverance, community, and hope. They remind me of the vibrant life we built before the war, especially during my years as Dean of Faculty. I was Dean at Gaza University. A time defined by creativity, intellect, and the belief that education could light a path through even the darkest days of the siege and blockade. Israel's assault on Gaza has spared no sector of civilian life. Infrastructure, hospitals, schools, shelters, and mosques lie in ruins. Entire families, as we have heard from our students, have been wiped out, and whole neighborhoods, including educational and medical institutions, reduced to rubble. This devastation forms the backdrop to Gaza's ongoing humanitarian and intellectual catastrophe. I'm not sure if there is any. You can see here how we tried to survive the first days or the first months of the war when I was in Gaza. As you can see in number 1, I tried my best to find, together with a colleague and also neighbors, a solar panel where we could charge our devices, our mobiles. And the second photo is the neighborhood where I lived and grew up. And third photo is my flat. You can see in such destroyed and damaged flat. And then fourth image is my classroom at Gaza University. And in the last photo is an UNRWA school where my daughters learned for their years or for the schools. Distinguished members of the jury, in the Gaza Strip, we have 12 higher education institutions accredited by the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. As you can see here, the photos of our beautiful campuses. In these campuses, where I used to work, in some of them, we used to teach, also to educate, because these are not just buildings. These represent generations and generations. So the deliberate and systematic destruction is called and termed by scholars as Scholasticide, a term that I learned only recently, though I have lived it for years. In Gaza, it's daily life. The Scholasticide refers to the systematic, intentional destruction for a people's education or educational infrastructure, intellectual communities, and cultural knowledge and knowledge systems. Of course, it includes or encompasses targeted attacks, deliberate erasure, structural incapacitation, epistemic violence, but also what I can add to the definition on concept of scholasticide is the Israeli incitement against the Palestinian syllabus and Palestinian curriculum. Libraries, archives, and ministries were flattened. As I said, these were not just buildings. They were generations of learning, research, and dreams collapsing in an instant. The jury should take into account what Israel has done is not only to destroy schools, universities, or colleges in Gaza, it has deliberately shattered the idea of a future built through education. In its genocidal war, Israel has left anything in Gaza, including all educational and higher educational institutions in Gaza. As you can see here, how Israel devastated and destroyed the campuses of our universities, and also killed colleagues that I used to work closely in Gaza. Here I refer to the former president of the Islamic University, Professor Sufyan Tayyar. He was killed alongside his family in Jabalia camp. Also, two of my colleagues from the same department, Dr. Hibal Abadla and Dr. Imtinan. And also, I would never forget my colleague and friend, Dr. Wesam Amer. He was a professor at Al-Aqsa University. We share the same name, and we share the same fellowship. He was a CARA Fellowship, a Scholars at Risk program at Manchester University. But he returned to Gaza before October 7th. He was killed in Gaza. Actually, he was killed in Rafah. And I always think of him personally because not only we share the same name or we share the same fellowship, but also I put myself in his position. If I would have stayed in Gaza, what kind of faith I would have faced in Gaza. I know time is running, but I think to respond to scholasticide, we need to have de-scholasticide approach, because to respond to the systematic construction or destruction, to respond to the systematic destruction, we need to have a systematic construction. And for this systematic construction, I think we should work together in a very collective way where we can support the sumud, the resilience and steadfastness of people and academics and students in Gaza. Finally, the jury should recognize that the justice for Gaza must include the right to learn, to teach, and to remember. To kill a scholar is to kill the memory of a people. To bomb a university is to bomb the bridge to the future. Knowledge survives in fragments of memory, in the will to resist erasure. Also here, I would like to finish this talk with a poem that I always finish my talks with, by Dr. Rifat Al-Arir, because he was a dear friend and colleague at the Department of English at the Islamic University of Gaza. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things. We keep saying, keep explaining, and we keep telling the story of every single university, of every single student in Gaza. And of course, if I must die, let it be bring hope. We need this hope to rebuild Gaza and make it a tale of success, to save the generations of students, academics in Gaza, in Palestine, in general. Thank you so much.
It's time for questions and answers. So I will ask the members of the jury if they have any questions, please to address.
Thank you very much for all the presentations. They're heartbreaking, to tell the truth. When the youth loses its hope, it brings the whole nation down. I want to ask the officials, the dean, about the students' records. Do we know if these students' records have been preserved, or if they are online, or if they are digitally available, or all these records for the past since Gaza's universities have been in existence? Have they been lost forever, or is there a way to retrieve them? Also, I know there were a lot of archival material that are very difficult to reproduce. I know Isra University, for example, they had lots of archaeological findings, possibly up to 3,000 pieces. So I don't know if we have a good record on what is lost, what is preserved, what is not there. Are there reports? I have seen a lot of reports, medical reports and other reports, but I haven't seen anything on universities and education would be very helpful if there are some reports that will have all these answers to these questions, particularly on the issue of students' records.
Thank you for the question. Usually in Gaza, we reserve or save the administrative records in local servers inside the universities. Some of the universities have or had digital servers together in collaboration with other universities outside, outside Gaza. For example, Azhar University had cooperation with a university in Jordan. So they could save not every record for every student, but the majority, if we talk about the majority of students' administrative records, I would say, unfortunately, most of them have gone. The universities, the infrastructure in Gaza has all been gone, also for the universities. We tried to restore anything that we could at the beginning of the war, and then we asked the students to not to re-register, but to upload their manuscripts, any documents they have from the university. Then we tried to kind of restructure the all the administrative records for the students. It's a big issue because the techno infrastructure in Gaza has always been affected, not because of the war only, but also for the past 17 years of the siege. All the technologies were very limited in Gaza. And now with the universities in Gaza have resumed the online learning in May 2024. But honestly speaking, we do exaggerate when we say online learning, because the infrastructure for online learning is not there. We have the model platform, but if you talk about electricity, there is no electricity at all in Gaza. And we rely, or people rely actually on the solar panels that are available in some places. So, the students and, academics can charge their mobiles or their devices if they have any. Also, the safety and security are lost in Gaza. As a dean, I have never been able to ask any student or any academic to go to any educational cafe or hub in Gaza, because simply who would guarantee that this cafe or this hub would not be targeted by Israel. I know some colleagues, some students took the risk and walked long time to go to these to the so-called educational hubs or cafes in Gaza. But yeah, they took it was really personal initiative, I would say, but they took the risk to face all the dangers that possibly could happen. Also, if we talk about the internet needed for infrastructure, for online learning and infrastructure, we use eSIM cards with very limited data. Maybe like in the last few months, there was some availability of Wi-Fi connection. But if we talk about the beginning of the war, or the first 15 months, most of the people in Gaza relied on eSIM cards with very limited data. So basically, when I used to ask my colleagues in Gaza, especially during the times of the exams, to upload their exams, they said yes, they would, but they don't have the capacity. They don't have the internet connection. So I asked them actually to send me the drafts of the exams, and I tried to to rewrite the designed exam and then upload them online. Administrative records are part of the major issues that we face in Gaza, because now it is also connected to online learning. Because if you think about rebuilding the higher education, of course, administrative reports are important, but if we talk about the other elements to rebuild higher education institutions, of course, we need years and years. I'll say it is, rebuilding is very challenging, yet it is feasible. There is, way to reconstruct, if, as I said, like, if there is like collective work that brings different efforts together, so we can help and support the students in Gaza. Possibly in the next few years, we would only rely on online learning. Yeah. All right, thank you.
May I have a follow-up very quickly?
Yeah, of course, yeah, go on.
How do you think this is going to impact the students themselves? Do they have that spirit that they would like to go on? Do they have, are the spirited, if you read your interaction with them? I saw Malak, for example.
Second, please, sorry.
I'm trying to see how the students react. 88,000 people have been locked out of learning. And now what they are giving few opportunities, perhaps e-learning, few people will have the same opportunity as Malak. So what would come out of the others? Would they have the spirit of going through tough years of trying to get education? One of the parents was saying that he doesn't see any point of going to engineering or medical or whatever. They just wants for them to be able to read and write. That kind of spirit, how would it gonna affect how will it impact the overall educational system if one was to really rebuild?
Well, of course, there is an impact on the students. As you know, like, it's not only their universities or their classrooms have been destroyed. Like everything in Gaza, the priorities in Gaza have been, I would say, like, changed, but the priorities have been like modified. Rather than to think of education, the priority was to search for safety, security, water, food, and so on. Despite such situation, the students are very, very determined to continue their education. As dean and also as lecturer, I taught several models. If I talk about my personal experience, I got many, many messages, from students asking about, their certificates, about the materials that we communicate through WhatsApp groups. For each module, we have a WhatsApp group, to communicate the recorded voice lectures. This is like the strategy that we follow in Gaza, actually. We record our lectures by voice, and then we communicate these recorded lectures to our students via WhatsApp groups. And you can see, like, the students interact with us, even they face the bombardment. During the time of bombing, students came from one place to another. They also keep asking, hello, Dr. Wesam, what should we do this, what should we do that? When is the exam, when is that? Can we delay the exam for another time because one student, or they were like displaced from one place to the another. I wouldn't say the students lost hope. Still, they determined, they have the resilience, but they need support to continue their education.
Thank you very much. The question is for our speaker just now. I'm just wondering whether one could take a leave from the South African experience. A lot of the movements which sustained the anti-apartheid struggle, this was somewhere in the middle of the long struggle. Those movements actually operated from outside South Africa and outside the region in some respects. Meaning by which, can we look towards a situation where we will have Palestinian movements run and managed by non-Palestinians, non-Arabs in other parts of the world, who provide the information, who do the dissemination, which you are not able to do because of your situation. You have very basic problems like the problem of internet and the problem of maintaining communications on a constant and continuous manner. But people outside can do these things, even though they may not be in touch with you regularly.
Yep.
But they are part of a larger struggle. I may be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen that sort of internationalization of the Palestinian struggle in relation to education so far, where academics who have their own personal links, they may not be part of an established infrastructure, but through their own links, they're able to sustain the struggle. Do you see something like that evolving in the case of Palestine?
Well, to respond to the Scholasticide, internally there have been many local initiatives. One of them is called the TTSI and by Al-Najah University, and also another campaign, Right to Education by Birzeit University at the beginning of the war, where they hosted the Palestinian students from Gaza online to join the universities in the West Bank. This is first. If we talk about the external support and lead movement, I'm being involved in some initiatives, and I'm happy to say that the Palestinian-led network called Academic Action Network for Palestine, is known as Act4Pal, which has been established in London by Palestinian academics, scholars, by which we try to educate and raise awareness and also to support our students and colleagues in Gaza. By this network, we talk to many partners, not only in the UK, but actually worldwide. We have several programs where to support, one of these programs is students at home scholarships, where we target the MA students who joined the MA programs at the universities in Gaza before October 7th, but they could not finish their studies because of the war, where we support them with tuition fees and also with mentorship, to support them also, academically. Another project is about mental health and trauma treatment that we also pay attention to. I wouldn't exaggerate if we say that everyone in Gaza is traumatized, even include myself and my daughters and my close family. Everyone in Gaza is traumatized because of all of what we have seen in Gaza is really beyond the imagination. So there is like some projects in collaboration with the universities in the UK. Also, there is the emergency committee led by Palestinian academics. Actually, it's a coalition of 3 universities in Gaza where they promote the support for students in Gaza. I mean, they mobilize and they promote the work worldwide as well. They have a SNAD program where people can fund the students. I mean, they can sponsor students, so mainly for tuition fees and releasing the certificates. Universities in Gaza do not ask students to pay tuition fees, but also at the same time, they do not release the certificates until students pay when they work. So it's like kind of, helping each other. Students are not obliged to pay the tuition fees now, or they can pay in installments until they finish their studies. I have to say, I have to clarify this point because all the universities in Gaza since 2017 rely completely, 100% on students' tuition fees. There is no other external funding for the universities. This means that if the universities, if the students pay the tuition fees for the universities, then the universities can cover some of the running costs. For example, like the salaries. I've never, ever got a full salary in Gaza, in my work. Never I got full salary. It's always on the reserve, like 50, 40% a month, and then the rest of the salary is placed on the reserve, and we don't know when we will get. And it's not only me, it's like every university in Gaza follows this, actually this strategy, because this is the only available option for Gaza. So it's like helping students covering their tuition fees would indirectly sustain the higher education system in Gaza. This is why we call on the movements around the world. I know there are many initiatives, either for example individual or group initiatives, but unfortunately from my observation, from my analysis, most of these initiatives work in isolation. They don't work together. So I always call on a collective, collaborative approach and framework where all these grassroots movements, initiatives, individually or collectively come together to prevent duplications of efforts, save money, and of course, save efforts, and of course, for building on rebuilding the higher education in Gaza. Thank you.